You know, have you ever had a moment where you just, like, knew you messed up? Like, for real?
Oh, man,
Yeah.
that heavy kind of, I really went too far this time feeling.
Right. And you just sit there thinking, I don't even know how to fix this.
hmm It's a quiet kind of panic.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that right there, that's exactly where this deep dive meets us today. Because I want you to imagine, just for a second, staring down an absolute unpayable deficit.
Like a financial deficit?
Yeah, but I mean, not just like a heavy credit card bill from the holidays or, a 30-year mortgage. I mean, a mountain of debt so astronomically high that you could work three full-time jobs, hustle every single weekend, live on instant ramen and tap water for the rest of your natural life, and you still wouldn't even cover the interest.
Wow. So the math just straight up laughs at you.
It laughs at you. And that sensation of total, inescapable bankruptcy, that is basically the premise of one of the most provocative texts of the ancient world.
It really is.
Today, we're looking at a letter written to a deeply divided ancient Rome. Specifically, the book of Romans, chapter 3, verses 21 through 31.
Right.
And we've got a great stack of historical and theological commentary from writers like Tom Green, Jim Leavenworth, and Catherine Robinson. We're using all of that to unpack what might be, honestly, the most massive paradigm shift in human history.
Which is this radical concept of righteousness through faith.
Exactly.
And, it's incredibly relevant today because that ancient Roman dilemma perfectly mirrors our modern psychology.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, think about the human condition for a second. We are completely obsessed with trying to prove our worth, right?
Right. Constant.
Whether we're doing it through climbing the corporate ladder or curating a flawless aesthetic on social media.
We're constantly trying to claim the moral high ground in our social circles.
Yes, we are exhausting ourselves trying to justify our own existence. We just want to show the universe that we're good enough, that we've earned our spot.
We want to hand the universe our resume. But the text we are analyzing today essentially takes that human resume and just runs it right through a shredder.
It really does.
The author of this letter, Paul, spends the first few chapters of this document painting a brutally bleak picture of humanity. By the time you hit verse 20, he has systematically stripped away every single argument a person could make to defend their own goodness.
We are that person staring at the unpayable mountain of debt.
Right. But then the text drops a bomb. Verse 21 begins with two words. But now...
Man, from a purely literary standpoint, that might be the ultimate narrative pivot.
Yeah.
But now...
Yeah, it changes everything.
Because the setup leaves absolutely no wiggle room for humanity to save itself, which means the rescue has to come entirely from the outside.
Right, and to really visualize the weight of that pivot, Tom Green's historical commentary points to a pretty incredible parallel.
Oh, the 1683 Siege of Vienna.
Yes. Picture the scene. The city of Vienna is completely surrounded by an Ottoman army of roughly 200,000 soldiers.
That is massive.
Yeah, and the city is starving. Their defenses are literally crumbling to the ground. Defeat isn't just like a worst-case scenario.
It's a mathematical inevitability.
Exactly. They're completely doomed. They're out of options.
Right.
But then, out of nowhere, the Polish king, Jan Sobieski, crests the hill with his cavalry. He launches this massive charge, wins a totally decisive victory, and literally saves Western Europe from collapse.
They gave him the title Savior of Vienna.
Right. Savior of Vienna. And that historical moment perfectly captures the theological weight of what Paul is arguing in this text.
Just like the citizens of Vienna, humanity was entirely unable to deal with the siege of its own failure.
Yeah.
So Christ stepping into the timeline is presented as Sobieski cresting the hill when the city was already lost. The Savior does what is literally impossible for the city to do for itself.
Which naturally brings up a major structural question about this text. If we were totally helpless, right, and if the old system of rules couldn't actually save anyone...
Which the commentary on verses 19 and 20 makes very clear.
Right, then what was the point of all those ancient laws in the first place? Why give a starving, besieged city a heavy rule book instead of a rescue squad?
Well, that is the exact tension the original audience was grappling with. Humans instinctively treat moral laws, whether it's the ancient Ten Commandments or our own modern secular codes of ethics, as a ladder.
A ladder.
Yeah, we are psychologically wired to think, if I just climb these rungs, if I just do these 10 good things and avoid these 5 bad things.
Then I'll climb my way up to heaven. Or at least earn the title of a good person.
Exactly. We love a ladder. It gives us control.
It lets us track our progress.
It does. But the text argues that the law was never designed to be a ladder. Its true design was always a mirror.
Oh, wow. A mirror.
Yeah, Catherine Robinson's commentary notes that the law was designed to, quote, silence every mouth.
Meaning no one can brag.
Right. It was meant to produce a deep, inescapable awareness of failure. When you look into the mirror of absolute perfection, you don't see a reflection of how great you're doing. You see exactly how far short you fall.
Because a mirror can show you the dirt on your face, but it doesn't provide the soap to wash it off.
That is precisely the function of the law in this framework. It ensures that everyone is held accountable to an impossible standard. Which leads right into verse 23.
Yeah. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God.
Talk about the ultimate equalizer.
Really, though, that single sentence completely levels the playing field for you, for me, and for those ancient Romans. Nobody has an edge.
Nobody's walking around clean on their own.
Right. If the law is a mirror, you can't look at someone else and say, well, I'm slightly cleaner than that guy. Because you are both still infinitely far from the standard of absolute perfection.
Exactly. Whether you missed the target by an inch or missed it by a mile, you still missed the target. You are still in debt.
So the text establishes this baseline of total bankruptcy. The ladder is gone. We only have a mirror.
So if the mirror just reflects our ruin and there is no ladder we can climb, we're stuck.
Yeah, a mirror can't pull you out of a burning building, which means the rescue has to come entirely from the outside. So how exactly does this text claim that happens? Let's look at the mechanics of the rescue in verses 24 through 26.
Well, Paul uses two incredibly heavy, historically loaded words here to explain the underlying economics of this rescue: justified and redemption.
Okay, let's break those down.
In a legal sense, being justified means a judge declaring the guilty party to be not guilty. And the sources highlight a crucial nuance here.
Which is?
In this theological framework, when God declares people righteous, he doesn't just pardon them.
Because a pardon just means you don't go to jail, but you're still a convicted felon.
Right. Justification goes further. It actually changes their fundamental status. It is as if they never committed the crime in the first place.
Okay, wait, let me push back on that because logically, that creates a massive problem.
How so?
Well, if a human judge looks at a person who is clearly, undeniably guilty of a serious crime and just bangs the gavel and says, I declare you completely innocent and righteous, we don't call that a good judge. We call that a corrupt judge.
That's a fair point.
How does the text claim God does this without totally compromising his own justice?
That is the exact paradox the second word solves. Redemption.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, in the ancient Roman world, redemption wasn't just a religious buzzword. It had a very specific, brutal economic meaning.
Right, like buying back a slave.
Exactly. It referred to setting a slave or a prisoner of war free through the payment of a ransom. The judge isn't just ignoring the crime. The penalty for the crime is catastrophic, but someone else steps in to absorb it.
So it's a status change, but someone has to eat the cost.
And the key takeaway from the commentary is the immense cost of this transaction. This salvation is handed to humanity completely free of charge, but it was not cheap to provide. It was paid for with a tremendous price: the life and blood of Christ.
Jesus didn't just put a down payment on the sin.
No, he paid it.
He paid it.
Mm.
But, even with that mechanism explained, human nature violently resists this concept.
We really do struggle with the idea of a completely free gift.
We always want to pay our own way, even when we can't afford it. The sources bring up an analogy about college debt that completely exposes how ridiculous our pride is in this situation.
Oh, the need-based scholarship analogy.
Uh-huh.
That captures our reluctance perfectly.
Yeah, imagine a college student who has racked up massive, crushing, six-figure student loan debt. They are drowning. They can't even afford groceries, let alone the interest payments.
Right.
Then a wildly generous philanthropist learns about their situation, steps in and says, I've paid the entire sum. Your balance is zero. And to cover the rest of your education, here is a full need-based scholarship. The debt is entirely gone.
It's completely handled.
Right. But what if that student, upon hearing this incredible news, goes home and decides to mail a check for $50 every month to the university?
It would be irrational. It would actually be an insult to the philanthropist.
It's completely absurd. The debt was already absorbed. Why are you trying to pay for something that is already handled? But the commentary points out that this is exactly how humanity reacts to grace.
It really is.
We constantly try to scrape together our little $50 monthly payments of good deeds or rule following to try and pay off a multi-million-dollar moral deficit that the text explicitly says has already been canceled. Why are we so desperate to pay?
Well, I mean, Because accepting pure charity is a massive blow to the human ego.
Yeah.
It requires us to openly admit that we were helpless, that our ladder climbing was useless. We want to be investors in our own rescue, not just beneficiaries.
So true.
But Paul drives the reality of this cost home by introducing a deeply complex word in verse 25, propitiation.
Which sounds like an intimidating piece of theological jargon.
It is a heavy term,
Yeah.
but for the Jewish readers in ancient Rome, its meaning was deeply visual and visceral. This word immediately invoked the imagery of the Day of Atonement from the Old Testament.
Oh,
Once a year, the high priest would enter the most holy place in the temple, going behind a thick, heavy veil. He would take sacrificial blood and place it on what was called the mercy seat.
the mercy seat.
Yeah, this was a symbolic, high-stakes ceremony to atone for the sins of the entire nation.
So the original audience isn't reading propitiation as some abstract philosophy. It's tied to this very solemn, bloody, intense ritual they all knew.
Exactly. And Paul is arguing that Christ's sacrifice was the ultimate, final fulfillment of that ancient ceremony. His shed blood fully satisfied the justice and wrath of God.
Wow.
It proves that God isn't just looking at human evil, winking and saying, don't worry about it, nobody's perfect.
No.
That would make him the corrupt judge you mentioned earlier.
Right. A truly good judge cannot let atrocities walk free without the penalty being paid.
And the text argues that the penalty was exhausted entirely on the cross. The wrath was absorbed.
Which opens up a really fascinating logistical loophole. Jim Leavenworth's commentary touches on this, and it's a question that naturally arises if you think about the timeline.
The timeline of the cross.
Yeah, if the cross is the specific historical moment where this massive debt is actually paid and the wrath is satisfied,
Right.
what about all the people who lived, sinned, and died thousands of years before the cross? How did people like Abraham or David get justified? Was God just ignoring their sins in the meantime?
It's a brilliant technical question. And Paul actually anticipates it in verse 25 when he mentions God's forbearance.
Like when a bank grants you forbearance and temporarily pauses your mortgage payments.
A very similar economic concept, yeah.
Hmm.
God exercised forbearance by temporarily passing over the former sins of Old Testament believers.
Okay.
But, and this is the crucial distinction, he didn't forgive them by ignoring them permanently. He rolled the debt forward. He held it in a sort of cosmic escrow and ultimately dealt with every single past sin at the cross. The event of the cross reaches backward in time to cover Abraham, and it reaches forward in time to cover us. All human debt, past, present, and future, was consolidated and dealt with in that one singular moment.
That is a staggering way to view history. The cross functioning as the fulcrum of the entire human timeline, settling the accounts of both the ancients and the moderns.
Exactly. It's how God maintains his status as perfectly just while still justifying the guilty.
So, if we take this framework seriously, if the debt is entirely paid by an outside party and we didn't contribute a single dime to the payment, we have to look at the psychological aftermath in verses 27 through 31. What happens to the human ego?
It is completely dismantled. The text asks a rhetorical question. Where is boasting then? And the answer is emphatic. It is excluded.
Because you cannot brag about a rescue you slept through.
Right.
You can't stand on the shattered walls of Vienna, look at the retreating Ottoman army, and say to your starving neighbor, wow, look how great I am at military strategy.
When King Sobieski's cavalry did 100% of the fighting.
You would sound completely delusional.
You really would. And Paul emphasizes that this ego death applies to absolutely everyone, whether you are a religiously observant Jew or a pagan Gentile.
The playing field was completely level in our bankruptcy. And it is completely level in our rescue. No one gets to strut.
Salvation is achieved purely by faith.
Okay, we need to spend some time on that word, faith, because I think modern culture has thoroughly hijacked and distorted what that word actually means.
Oh, absolutely.
If you look at pop psychology, secular music, or motivational speakers, we have this obsession with phrases like, just believe in yourself. Or, if you believe it with enough energy, you can achieve it.
Yes, modern culture treats faith as an internal power source. It's viewed as a manifestation technique.
Exactly. We treat faith like it's a muscle we have to flex. But Tom Green's source material uses a brilliant analogy that completely dismantles that pop culture view.
The ocean liner analogy.
Yeah, it points out a hard truth. It does not actually matter how much intense emotional faith you can drum up. What matters entirely is the object you put your faith in.
The integrity of the vessel.
Let's visualize it.
Yeah.
Say you need to cross the Atlantic Ocean. You walk up to a massive, steel-hulled, state-of-the-art ocean liner. You might be terrified of the water. You might have very weak, trembling faith as you walk up that gangplank. But because you put your tiny amount of faith in a fundamentally sound vessel, you are going to make it across the ocean.
The vessel does the work, regardless of your internal anxiety.
Conversely, imagine you walk up to the beach with a plastic inflatable pool float,
Oh boy.
but you have immense, unwavering, fiercely confident faith in that pool float. You have manifested it, you believe in it with all your heart. It doesn't matter. You are delusional and you're going to drown in the middle of the Atlantic.
It's a stark contrast, but it perfectly illustrates Paul's logic. Everybody's got faith in something, but where you put it determines everything. It is not the emotional intensity of the belief that saves you. It is the structural integrity of the vessel you are trusting.
Wow. Having faith in yourself or your own good deeds to clear an infinite moral debt is like paddling a pool float into a hurricane.
It really is.
True faith, the kind of faith this ancient text is demanding, must be placed entirely in the faithful one. Christ is the ocean liner.
And if you really internalize that, it is incredibly freeing. You don't have to exhaust yourself trying to summon up an incredible amount of emotional belief or moral perfection. You simply have to stop trusting your pool float and step onto the right vessel.
But you know, this paradigm shift creates one final massive paradox.
Right, the question of the law.
It's a potential contradiction that the text tackles head on in verse 31. If a listener is following this logic, the natural conclusion is, okay, so I am saved totally apart from the law. I can't earn it. It is a completely free gift. The debt is absorbed. Doesn't that make the law entirely void? Why should I bother being good? Can't we just throw out the moral rule book and do whatever we want?
It is the most logical next question. If grace is free, why pursue morality at all? If nothing changed in your life, did you really believe?
That is the question right there.
And Paul resolves this tension beautifully. He asks, do we then make void the law through faith? And his response is, God forbid, yea, we establish the law.
But how does trusting a free rescue actually uphold the rules? That sounds contradictory.
It comes down to a total transformation of motivation. Catherine Robinson's notes explain this shift perfectly. In the old system, you were working for your rescue.
Okay.
In the new system, you were working from your rescue. We do not do good works to earn salvation. We do good works to demonstrate the salvation we have already freely received.
To put that in an everyday context, think about a corporate employee. Imagine an employee who shows up at 6 a.m. every day, works frantic 12-hour shifts, and obsessively checks their emails.
They're stressed.
Right, because they are doing it entirely out of fear. They are terrified of being fired. They are trying to prove their worth to a boss who constantly demands perfection. That employee is going to burn out. They are miserable.
That is the person trying to use the law as a ladder.
But now imagine a different employee. The owner of the company calls them in, forgives all the mistakes they've ever made, and totally unexpectedly hands them a 50% equity stake in the company. They are now an owner. They don't have to prove their worth anymore. Their status is eternally secure. That employee is still going to show up early and work incredibly hard, but the motivation has entirely flipped.
Right. They aren't working out of the fear of being fired. They're working out of deep gratitude and a sense of ownership.
Exactly.
The law is no longer a threat hanging over their head. It becomes a joyful guide for how to operate within their new status. The rules haven't vanished, but the fear of the rules is gone.
Working from the rescue, not for the rescue. That fundamentally changes how a human being operates in the world.
It changes everything. You remember who you used to be and you realize God still said yes to you. That ought to humble you and change how you live.
So to pull all of these threads together, let's look at the epic journey this text has taken us on. It started with the terrifying realization that our moral debt is mathematically unpayable. We had to face the reality that our ladders of self-improvement were useless, and the law was just a mirror reflecting our bankruptcy.
But into that exact moment of despair comes the "but now" of verse 21, the rescue mission. Christ stepping into the timeline to absorb the penalty, satisfying the absolute justice of God, and offering justification in a totally new status as a free gift.
Which leaves us with the profoundly leveling reality that our egos have to die. Boasting is completely absurd. Faith isn't a superpower we muster up. It's simply trusting the right ocean liner to carry us across the water.
So if you are listening to this right now, this ancient Roman framework isn't just history. It is a psychological lifeline.
Yeah.
It is an open invitation to drop the exhausting act. You can stop trying to prove your worth through your constant hustle, your rigid rule following, or your curated moral resume. The
Mhm.
debt is canceled, the ransom is paid.
It is the ultimate permission to finally exhale. But
Yes.
before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final lingering question to ponder on your own. It builds on everything we've unpacked today about this paradigm shift. If you truly internalize this, if you woke up tomorrow morning and fully, deeply believed that your massive spiritual and moral deficit was paid in full, that you are living every single second on a need-based scholarship of grace with absolutely zero room left for your own ego,
Hmm.
how would that fundamentally change the way you treat the people who wrong you tomorrow? If your unpayable mountain of debt was wiped clean by an outside rescue, how does that completely reshape the demands and the judgments you place on everyone else?
That is a deeply confronting question to walk away with.
Think about it. We'll
Yeah.
catch you on the next Deep Dive.